Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. Can a couple recover from an emotional affair? Is that one worse or not as bad as a physical affair? That's the challenge our next OP is going to go through. This one's from user Concerned1234. My wife is becoming closer with a coworker and making excuses, culminated in a fight between us after an office party. Hi everyone. I really need to vent and also just try to make sense of what I'm going through. My wife has been working closely with a guy at work, and it has developed to them walking together a couple mornings per week, coffees and lunches, texting after hours, etc. I've expressed concern, saying that I feel she is giving the quality time that she might give to me and our kids to this guy. He's divorced, has kids of his own, and she has invited him and his kids to work at our house whilst I've been at work. I didn't find out about this until after I found some of my stuff had been rummaged through, and when I asked, she admitted that he and his kids were over and his kids must have rummaged through my stuff. This has all now culminated with an office party. I've never met the guy, and to try and put me at ease, my wife said, "Oh, this will be great, you'll finally get to meet him." That put my mind at ease until we arrived to the party and she seemingly made every effort to avoid going over to talk to him. She introduced me to every other coworker and even introduced me to a coworker who was standing next to him and then said, "Oh yeah, and oh, by the way, that's such and such." I'd never seen him and thought, crap. I've never seen this dude, and I know you've been working closely and forming a friendship bond. But it seems like she didn't even want to introduce us. After that, I was on guard. The guy was, in my opinion, more attractive than me. Taller, physically more dominant, chiseled jaw, alpha personality, etc. I barely spoke to him because I clicked within a minute that this guy was an alpha and wanted me to engage with him, and I wasn't playing that. But what I did do was step back and remove myself from my wife's side to see what transpired. As my wife drank a bit more, she would periodically go over and join his group for conversation. During this time, I continued to mingle with other of her coworkers. I even went to the bathroom, and when I returned, she was in a group conversation with this guy. And when I went back and stood by her side, after a minute, he looks at me, doesn't say a word, and walks off to another conversation. During the drive home, I asked my wife to show me the messages she has been exchanging with him. They are not sexual or overly intimate, but they are detailed and consistent. A lot of emojis, funny gifs, banter, competitive banter, etc. I feel crushed. She assures me nothing has or ever will happen, that I can trust her, and if he ever made an advance, she would end the friendship. But I call BS, and I can't seem to get over it. I need some advice or support. This whole ordeal is making me feel very pathetic that I am just this wimp watching his wife flirting with an alpha male. And also quite ashamed because it's making me want to be extra controlling and want to monitor her movements and phone messages, and that's certainly not like me. Any advice would be great. Okay, OP, the first thing I would say to you is, and this is my personal opinion, and I know some people may not agree with it, but here I go. I don't like categorizing people. I don't like saying this is an alpha male, this is a beta male, because the minute that you categorize yourself, you stick yourself in a box that you can't get out of. I believe that sometimes in life, people start out being more shy or being, less social, and in time, with work, they become more confident, and maybe they're just as shy, but they're confident enough to not let themselves get dragged into this alpha-beta game. Apart from that, my other piece of advice would be sit down with your wife and put everything on the table. Everything. Ask her to please be open to how you feel and to try to understand what's going through your mind. I believe that between partners, one of the most important things is to not undermine how the other one is feeling. Because the moment you do that, the moment that you start losing respect for the other person. My point being that whether or not your wife is having an emotional affair, you should be able to talk to her about how you're feeling, if you're insecure or not, and she should be able to acknowledge it and actually say, okay, I'll work on not making you feel this way, and be active about it. But of course, like I said, this is just my opinion and my advice for OP. Now let's move on to the community comments to see what kind of advice they gave him with some responses from OP. Midget Widget says, he's been to your house, knows of you, and didn't say a word to you? That's ridiculous and obviously something to investigate. If he values her so much as a friend, wouldn't it mean a lot to him to get to know her partner? OP responds, exactly my point. Another work colleague of hers made a beeline for me and chatted and introduced themselves and was really nice. This guy didn't. Waited until we eventually made our way to him and then had the tacky, I've heard so much about you shtick. I didn't approach him again for the rest of the evening thinking he might want to come and be polite and talk to me, but didn't. I trust my wife, but this mother effer is on my radar and I've told my wife to cut it with anything more than polite professional discussion. Deleted says, all I can say is trust your gut. You're no dummy. Also, I find it very inappropriate she invited this man into the house without saying anything. Kranok says, she definitely has an emotional connection to him that goes beyond that of a normal friendship. But the thing that really was not okay was to invite him to your house and not inform you before or after it happened. You had to find out. Why did she do that if it was so innocent? Where were they when his kids rummaged through your stuff? Because nobody was watching them. That is for sure. In the end, if his kids wouldn't have rummaged through your stuff, you would have never found out. Why did she hide it from you? Why did she never wanted to tell you about it? Why the secrecy? I couldn't accept those lies. But she hasn't lied. She lied by omission. That is just a weak excuse for a lie. Your wife knows how you feel about him and still wants to stay in contact with him. So you should expect that this behavior goes on. I guess that you need to learn to deal with that. I am pretty sure that she wouldn't stop it if you ask her to. OP responds, I've asked her to cut all ties and to maintain a professional relationship only. If she doesn't, then I think things will escalate. I absolutely agree that it was not okay for your wife to invite him and his kids to your house without you knowing and having to find out. That definitely puts this whole situation in a very sketchy light. I would tell her that the way she's treating this relationship is affecting my trust in her. If she gets defensive about that, then I would worry. If she acknowledges that there's something going on and that she doesn't know what it is, but it's still happening, then I would work with her to try to figure out what the problem is and try to solve it with her, like a couple should do. The one thing I would ask you to be careful with is to not make decisions while in an overly emotional state. Usually, those are the decisions people sometimes regret. In any case, that's enough out of me. Let's move on to the update to see what OP did. I received a lot of advice to leave my wife and a lot of confirmation that they were already sleeping together. I thought I'd provide this update and seek any further advice. First thing, the trust is still completely broken, but we are committed to mending the situation. The main reason for that is because I know nothing intimate has happened and that my wife has remained faithful in that sense. This was confirmed by some long, in-depth discussions, commencement of reassurance from my wife, some conversations with her sister who is very close to my wife and also me and was very honest about her knowledge and interpretation of the situation. My wife, unfortunately, still does not believe she was emotionally cheating, but I believe she was. We will commence counseling in 2021, and we have both committed that we will treat counseling like relationship exercise. That we will continue to do it regardless of whether things go back to normal or not. Her engagement with her work colleague is still required for professional reasons. This has burned me, and I've had moments where I almost called him or gone to hunt him down to confront him. But at the end of the day, I held back. And the reason for that is because it's become clear he's a nothing guy. It's clear that if my wife threw away her life, her family, the respect of our kids, and everything for a fling with this person, it would be laughable. One of the biggest things I did, and believe me, this is hard, was to focus on my own worth and my own value, without selling myself short. Additionally, after a couple of days of high emotions, we have settled into a more naturally feeling intimacy. We kiss, we tell each other we love each other, we are real. But it's hard, because just under the surface for me, the tension exists. I've told her to set particular boundaries and to seek a transfer to another project as soon as possible. She said she won't be able to do that until at least June, which is fine because it allows me time to evaluate my options and her behavior more closely. I've made the conclusion that I have two real options. 1. Work on my marriage with strength. 2. Leave and move on to a new chapter in life. I'm working on option 1, but I also know that both options are available to me. I've also stopped blaming myself and her. It's not worth it. The behavior now is what matters, and I'm watching every action, decision, behavior as closely as possible. My biggest challenges right now are how to rebuild trust, because right now I don't trust her one bit, and it takes every bit of my control to not demand I see her phone, which wouldn't matter since she would have deleted anything if anything was there to be deleted. So in closing, I didn't knee-jerk leaving my wife, and I'm glad I didn't. I wasn't going to destroy my life and the lives of my children over a literal loser. My wife has a lot of mending to do. The ball is in her court. I don't trust her, but I'm going to work on myself to rebuild that trust. If the trust isn't able to be mended, either by her actions or by my inability to move on, then our future may look grim. But one thing I can squarely say is that at this point, and it's hard and sometimes I lapse, I am in full command of my emotions, my actions, and my self-confidence. Thanks for everyone who commented and offered advice. Well, OP, to me it sounds like you're on the right track. Congratulations on your self-growth about how to command your emotions and improve your self-confidence. That is fantastic. There's just two things that stood out to me that I would like to point out to maybe help you, if you ever listen to this video. The first one is that you say that you want to take things back to normal with the help of a therapist. I would say don't take them back to normal, because normal is what got you in this situation in the first place. Your wife is at fault for expanding a work relationship into a more intimate level that she shouldn't have done. Something must have happened with her during this normal that you want to go back to that made her want to expand this relationship. I believe that you guys need to figure out what that was. The other thing I would say you need to be careful with is the trust part. On one hand, you say that your trust is broken, but that you want to build it back up. And on the other hand, because your trust is broken, you're going to be watching every little thing she does to see if there's something there. In my opinion, those two things contradict each other, and it might lead to something worse. Like your wife blowing up saying, you know what, you don't trust me, you're never gonna trust me, I'm done trying. Other than that, I think you guys are on the right track, and I think it's fantastic the growth that you've shown and that you are aware of your emotions, your actions, and your self-confidence. So on that note, let's now move on to the next story. We've read some stories where some people get revenge on their cheating partners. Some are huge and elaborate, and others can be just petty, like this next one. This one's from user Sushi Lady. I left my cheating ex on the top of a mountain. So I've, female 20, been dating this guy, male 22, for a little over a year now, and it's been nice even though we have our differences. I love to work out. I mean run up and down 14ers in my free time, and he's always been sort of lazy and out of shape, but is still easy on the ice, so it's never been an issue. Recently though, my girlfriend was at a bar with some of our other mutual friends and coincidentally and luckily saw him out with the boys as he said he would be. But his ex was there with him along with some other girls. She figured they just ran into each other. He's never done anything suspicious before, but I guess I've been a bit too trusting. She said she just kinda looked over there occasionally, but decided to text me when they were a little too close. I called him because he said he'd just be with the boys and he said he'd be home when he got home and hung up. At this point, I realized that I hadn't been paying much attention to his behavior. Not him, we literally lived together. Being preoccupied with college and work and everything that I've brushed off fell into place and I realized he was most definitely hooking up with his ex. He always stayed out late, would ignore my texts and calls for hours, hung out with his friends, but never invited me and has always been ridiculously protective of his phone, saying he wants to live his own life and it's private, which I should have called him out on, but I'm way too naive, I guess. This was my first real relationship. Anyways, he got home way late, like 3 a.m. I hadn't heard anything from my friend or him, but had been staying up plotting my revenge because a breakup over this type of thing isn't enough. I demanded that he give me his phone, and when he refused, I straight up said, "Then pack up your crap and leave." He's not in the contract, just been staying with me and my roommate and giving me rent since the bug started. I guess he didn't realize I would actually say something like that. I've always been super gushy over him and basically tend to his every need. Clearly, I would never be the one to break us up. He gave me his phone and I didn't know where to start, but eventually found a messaging app I've never heard of, and sure enough, when I opened it, the first name to pop up was his ex. Turns out, they met almost every weekend for drinks or a restaurant, and most definitely hooked up afterwards as well as sent some pics to each other. I was angry, but already had some petty revenge planned. He said the classic crap like, "I can be better, I never meant to hurt you, I'm so sorry, you've been nothing but good to me," and the infamous, "I can change." I had been waiting for that, so I said, "Prove it. Come on my hike with me tomorrow. Show me that you can change your ways and do something I like for once." I'm fairly manipulative. Oops. I've been trying to hit a 14er, that's a 14,000 plus mountain for those who don't live in Colorado, a weekend since the season started and have been fairly successful, only missing 1 week. I had been planning to finally do Long's Peak, but he would definitely not have made it to the top, so we did an easier one instead. Hiking up, he was a bee, and we stopped about every 30 minutes for him, making it a very boring 8-hour trip to the top. He was definitely trying to be nicer and sweeter than he has been, but it was kind of just pathetic at that point. I already knew I'd never take back a cheater. When we got to the top, he sat down immediately and drank the rest of his water, despite me warning him he definitely needed for the hike down. I took some obligatory pictures since this was still one I'd never done before, then gave him a kiss because, damn, those lips still, and said, "We're officially over," smiley face. Then turned to start my jog down. He was exhausted and couldn't keep up for long once we hit the trail again, but he was saying a bunch of stuff that I mostly tuned out, but I heard him say, "Slow down, you're just gonna have to wait in the car, B." To which I said, "Just call a friend, or better yet, your ex." I'm writing this in the car right now, and since I don't have the reception, hopefully it'll reach Reddit while I go home. It was a pretty long hike, so I doubt he'll be home for a while. He does have reception and there's a water fountain on the trail ahead. I made sure. I'm not too much of an a-hole. I don't know how things will turn out when he comes to get his stuff and where he'll go after. I'm really happy despite everything. Well, OP, that wasn't an overly elaborate explosive revenge, but you got your revenge and you feel better, so good for you. And of course we have an update, so let's continue with that to see what happened next. I wasn't going to do this for a while until all of his stuff is moved out, but I would love to address all of the comments concerned on his health and the whole kicking him out situation. To all the people posting hiking horror stories and calling me psychotic, a little background on my ex. He grew up in Canada with an extremely outdoorsy family who loves to camp. Taught him basic survival and also forced him on hikes as a kid. We have both camped together and snowboarded together. I ensured his pack would be enough should he get lost. He had a survival beacon that I use for backcountry skiing, paracord, a knife, compass, first aid kit, emergency blanket, whistle, bear spray, flashlight, ferro rod, like 3 or 4 Cliff Bars left, proper layered clothing, and probably other stuff that I'm forgetting that I shoved in there. He is no dumbass to the wilderness and can follow a trail that was extremely, at least to me, heavily trafficked yesterday. He got dropped off by his friend and sure enough did not feel like moving all of his crap out, which was fine. It was a long day. He slept on the couch and I got everything of his out of my room last night. I was going to help out downstairs with getting all the little things of his since he's pretty moved in, but his ex showed up to help him pack, so now I'm just in my room writing this. We talked a little bit last night because I was curious about, well, everything. He was extremely angry, but I think too tired to take it out. Yelling, not physical. He said he stayed a ways behind a large group and kept their pace till he got to the tree line. then lost them. He thinks it took him about 5 hours to get down, but he's kinda terrible at time estimates, so it could have been shorter or longer. For those concerned about him having daylight left, people start 14ers way early in the morning if they're not running up them, and we particularly started at 4:30 a.m., summited around 12:15, and he had plenty of time to get out before nightfall. He's moving in with his ex and mentioned nothing about me illegally kicking him out, which I doubt he is concerned about. Yeah, he gets mail here, but I don't think he would consider he has a legal case, if he even does. All in all, things went well, and I'll never forget the look on his face at the summit. Mount Elbert for those asking. Well, OP, now he's out of your house. Good for you. So now it's time for you to move on and, live your life happily. All the best, OP. And so we've reached the end of the video. I truly hope you guys liked it. If you did, go ahead and click like. Of course, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Also, here are more videos from my channel that you might enjoy. And having said all that, I will see you guys on the next video.